There's something uniquely captivating about an R-rated, gritty sci-fi series with an engaging storyline, and the Riddick films certainly deliver on that front. With a rich mythology that rivals other iconic franchises like Star Wars, the Chronicles of Riddick series has developed into a cult classic over the years. When the first film, Pitch Black, hit theaters in 2000, no one could have anticipated the lasting impact this dark and thrilling saga would have. Pitch Black introduced us to a tough, no-nonsense anti-hero, a character that instantly captured our attention. Vin Diesel's portrayal of Riddick, with his raw and gritty performance, brought something special to the screen. In the movie The Chronicles of Riddick, we saw him face off against the formidable Necromongers, a race that posed a serious threat. So who exactly is Riddick? He's a notorious Furion outlaw, who starts off imprisoned in the first film, but manages to escape and embark on a series of dangerous and transformative adventures. His journey serves as the backbone of this underrated franchise, filled with action, intrigue, and complex characters. Despite its dark and intense nature, Riddick has remained a hidden gem within the sci-fi genre, often overlooked by mainstream audiences. In this video, we're diving into the Riddick universe to explain all the pieces that fit together, whether it's Riddick himself, the lethal Bioraptors, the fanatical Necromongers, or the eerie mud demons. We'll break it all down for you, offering a deeper understanding of this rich, yet often misunderstood series. In a time when blockbuster sci-fi franchises are becoming increasingly predictable, perhaps it's time to revisit this classic series that doesn't shy away from the dark and the unknown. Before we dive into the details, we'd like to make a small request. If you enjoy our content, consider supporting us by subscribing to our channel. It's just a click for you, but it truly means a lot to us. Thanks in advance. Now let's jump into the world of Riddick. What was Pitch Black all about? Let us first take you through the storyline of the first movie, which is considered by many to be the best in the series. The film is set in a distant future, quite possibly in a part of the galaxy far away from Earth. It is normal for people to travel through space, and the film begins with a transport ship carrying around 40 people on board. Everyone on board is in a state of cryosleep, but Riddick, strangely, is awake. Suddenly, the spaceship is caught in an accident where debris from a rogue comet hits the ship and damages the hull. The captain is killed immediately, and the sleeping passengers wake up to find themselves in the midst of a disaster. The spaceship is hurled into the atmosphere of a planet, and gravity makes it plunge toward the surface at extreme speed. The docking pilot, Carolyn Fry, and navigator Greg do their best to crash land without inflicting major damage. When they do, there are 11 survivors. While the spacecraft plunges, Greg attempts to send out a distress signal, though this does not work out. When Carolyn tries to ditch the passenger compartment in an attempt to ensure a safer landing, Greg stops her from doing so. After landing, Carolyn finds Greg impaled by a metal shaft and tends to him as he dies in excruciating pain. The 11 survivors are Carolyn Fry, William J. Johns, who seems to be a cop, Imam Abu al-Walid, who is on a religious pilgrimage accompanied by his 3 sons, a young stowaway teenager named Jack, Paris P. Ogilvy, an antique dealer, and settlers John Zeke and his partner Sharon. The other survivor is Riddick, a dangerous criminal who is being transported to be imprisoned. He has somewhat unusual eyes that enable him to see in absolute darkness, but daylight hurts his vision, and he has to wear goggles at all times. In the chaos of the crash, Riddick manages to free himself, but John soon arrests him. He is then tied up inside the spaceship, and the others try to explore the strange planet where they've landed. It seems to be a barren landscape that resembles an unending desert with nothing but sand in sight. Thankfully, the survivors can breathe the air of the planet, even though their breathing is somewhat labored. The first crisis they are faced with is the lack of water, but the Imam assures them that deserts will always have water sources. In the meantime, Riddick manages to free himself, and Johns hands out weapons to every other survivor, expecting Riddick to return to retrieve important things from the crash site. While everyone is wary of Riddick's notorious past, young Jack seems to be fascinated by him. Jack helps Sharon and Zeke put together a breather aid to assist with oxygen intake. Johns tries to look for Riddick using his telescope, and Fry asks the Imam to go scouting for a water source. It seems like sunset is in the cards, but then they find something remarkable. The planet has 3 suns that cause everlasting daylight. While 2 yellowish suns are setting, a bluish one is rising, ensuring constant light. The Imam believes that the direction of the blue sunrise would lead him to a water source, and Johns believes that Riddick would have gone the same way, trying to avoid light from the other 2 suns. The Imam and his 3 sons, along with Fry and Johns, set off in search of water and Riddick. The others are asked to watch the crash site with clear instructions to shoot Riddick immediately if they spot him. Riddick supposedly has infamous knife skills that would be disastrous for the survivors if he was given too much time. While watching through his telescope, Johns finds things that look like trees, and he thinks it to be the water source. However, on closer inspection, it turns out to be skeletal remains in a mass graveyard. This begs the crucial question: who or what killed everyone on the planet? Johns confronts Fry about her earlier decision to sacrifice the passengers for a safer landing, and his suspicion about Fry is confirmed. Riddick eavesdrops, but they are completely unaware of his presence. They move past the skeletal remains and head deeper into the planet. They come across what seems like an abandoned human settlement, and they even find things like a solar toy robot and other man-made objects. Fry comes across a room where the model of the planetary system has been explained. There are 3 suns, and 3 planets lie between them. The spaceship crash-landed in the middle planet, and with the suns on either side, it gets everlasting light. She also makes a delightful discovery when she finds a small spaceship near the settlement. At the site of the crash, Zeke is digging a mass grave while watching out for Riddick along with the others. When an unknown person appears, they shoot him because of his resemblance to Riddick, but he turns out to be just another survivor from the crash. Zeke brings all the bodies to be buried in the grave, but notices a strange hole in the ground. As he tries to inspect it closely, something strange drags him inside. Although he tries to escape by firing his weapon, it doesn't work. Sharon rushes in to find blood all around, but she sees Riddick sitting there with his knife. She thinks him to be the murderer, and Riddick runs off while the others give chase. Johns had heard the gunshot from a distance and rushes back to the site with Fry. While returning, he intercepts Riddick and successfully defeats him by tearing off the goggles. As Riddick is blinded by the sun, Johns overpowers him and takes him prisoner once again. Fry interrogates Riddick about his crimes, but he remains defiant, showing off his brand of sarcasm. He tells them that the group has a bigger problem to deal with, pointing to some dreaded creature lurking within the surface. Johns doesn't believe a word, but when Fry goes to inspect the hole, her fears are confirmed. They realize that they're dealing with a serious threat, and Johns unchains Riddick to fight alongside them. He promises him freedom if he helps them escape from the planet. The group heads to the abandoned human settlement, and they inspect the small spaceship closely. Paris believes that it is outdated, but Fry has an idea. They can adapt the old electrical system to their own. It's a low-capacity spacecraft, but Riddick infers that it would be just enough to transport them to the solar track shipping lanes, where they can be rescued. Zen2. Johns sends Riddick to get stuff that can repair the wings of the spacecraft, and Fry calculates that they would need 5 power cells to launch the spaceship. Sharon repairs a solar-powered vehicle that helps them transport the heavy load of the cells. The Imam and his sons manage to fix a moisture machine and produce water. Jack is so awed by Riddick that he shaves his head and puts on a pair of goggles to copy his look. Jack and one of the Imam's boys, named Ali, follow Riddick into a room. Riddick and Jack return to the main party, and everyone seems to be delighted to finally have water. However, it soon dawns on them that Ali is missing. We see the horrifying sight of bat-like alien creatures following Ali into one of the rooms. The others hear his screams, but they are too late, and they arrive to find a lifeless body. It turns out that the former occupants were geologists who were all killed by these alien creatures. Fry makes a startling discovery. She finds out that the planet experiences a total eclipse once every 22 years and is plunged into absolute darkness. They realize that their escape plans must be quick because the alien creatures seem to thrive in the darkness and are averse to light. These creatures, called the Bioraptors, are highly aggressive and powerful carnivores, the ultimate predators on the planet. Since they are sensitive to light, they live in dark caves and are large, winged creatures resembling dragons in many ways. You can also see a clear resemblance to the xenomorphs, despite some minor differences. Their ears are set far apart, leaving them with a blind spot in front of their heads. But these creatures also have a terrific sense of smell, which allows them to locate their prey at great distances. One of the most devastating weapons for the Bioraptors is their long, sharp incisors, which they use to stab or decapitate their prey. We saw two forms of this creature in the movie. One was the creature in its adult phase, and the other was the younger stage, where they are much smaller. The younger ones might not be able to kill a human individually, but in a large flock, they can do a lot of damage. Johns warns Fry against bringing the power cells until the last minute because Riddick has a reputation for escaping and hijacking spacecrafts. But Fry is happy to have someone else with knowledge of piloting a spaceship. In a conversation between the two, Riddick tells Fry all about Johns and his hoax. It turns out that Johns is not a cop, but a bounty hunter, and has a serious drug problem. Fry confronts him with her findings, and he admits that he is not a cop. In fact, his morphine addiction is obvious as well, and Fry is now skeptical as to what else he's hiding. The eclipse by now has started to descend upon the planet, and the group tries to hurry with a solar-powered vehicle. But the darkness takes over faster than they expected, and soon the planet transitions from twilight to pitch black. The moment it is dark enough, we hear the squeals of the young alien creatures flying in the sky. Everyone seeks refuge in the cargo hold cabin, but Sharon and Riddick fall behind. When a flock of these alien creatures passes over them, Riddick lies low, but Sharon panics. She tries to run, but is ripped apart by these creatures. Riddick removes his goggles and allows his eyes to get used to the darkness. After another of the Imam's sons falls prey to the creatures, they realize that the creature has no eyes and detects prey by receiving the echo from its body. The darkness seems to be long-lasting, and John's plan to try and wait out the eclipse doesn't seem so clever, considering what happened to the geologists who had tried the same. They decide to move, and Riddick leads the way with his night vision. He warns the group to avoid any cuts or wounds because the creatures seem to be drawn to the scent of blood. Jack is alarmed at this, and we soon find out why. It turns out that Jack is actually a girl who wanted to pose as a boy for safe travel, and she is bleeding, drawing the aliens' attention. Paris falls next when he drops a flashlight, and the creatures tear him apart. John suggests Jack be used as bait for the aliens to save the others, but Riddick is furious with this proposal. The two fight until Riddick cuts him with his knife. As an injured Johns tries to reach for his gun, the creatures fall upon him and consume him in no time. As the others run through the canyon, they see the alien creatures fighting overhead, resorting to cannibalism after years of hunger. When one of the Imam's boys is attacked by the aliens, Riddick seems to be heartlessly abandoning him. But when Jack is attacked, Riddick fights back. He saves Jack, but just as things start to look better, it starts raining, threatening their light sources. The Imam's last son is snatched by the creatures, and Riddick somehow manages to find a cave for the survivors to hide in. He then tries to leave in the spaceship, but Fry stops him, forcing him to go back for the others. The Imam, Jack, Fry, and Riddick head for the spacecraft, but Riddick is attacked by two aliens. Fry comes back for him, but she is killed, and an injured Riddick manages to get into the spaceship. When he powers the engines, the bright light from the craft kills several of these alien creatures that have surrounded them. Jack asks Riddick what they should tell the authorities about him, and Riddick suggests she tell them that he died on the planet. Besides the fact that he wants to get away from the clutches of the authorities, this moment also suggests that Riddick has transformed somewhat through his experience into a caring human. The Necromongers, an army unlike any other. The movie The Chronicles of Riddick opens with a voiceover that suggests the absolute domination by an evil race of warriors called the Necromongers. They are being led by Lord Marshal Gillot, the 6th commander of the forces. He had learned that he would be killed by a Furion, and this made him adopt the darkest philosophy of the Necromongers. The Necromongers believe that life is antagonistic to the natural side of the universe. They believe in a promised afterlife called the Underverse, and their fleet moves from one planet to another, propagating their beliefs forcibly. They also adhere to a system where you keep what you kill. Gilor and his forces have already consumed several galaxies and planets in a bid to eradicate any traces of the Furion race. It is also believed that Gilor has actually been to the Underverse, which made him lose his sanity and humanity. He is somewhere between living and dead, and has some special powers that make him extremely dangerous. He has sought to convert everyone to his own faith, and anyone who didn't obey faced certain death. We see a long-haired Riddick running through a snowy planet with a spaceship in pursuit. A mercenary named Toombs and his crew want to hunt Riddick down to secure the hefty bounty on his head, placed by someone on the planet Halion Prime. Riddick runs into a cave system, and the spacecraft follows, but Riddick proceeds to kill the crew one by one. Toombs is thrown from his own ship, and Riddick takes control of the ship and flies off to Halion Prime. Guess who made the bounty offer on him? It was the religious man that he had saved in the first movie, Imam. He has a new family now with his wife and daughter, and he informs Riddick about the fate of Jack, the girl who had pretended to be a boy in pitch black. She had run off looking for Riddick and ended up killing a few people before being put in prison. She is reportedly being held captive on a planet named Crematoria, where the harsh and scorching weather conditions make life very unpleasant. A ghost-like entity named Arion shows up at Imam's place and narrates the horrors that the Necromongers bring with them. They request Riddick's help in dealing with the imminent threat, but he doesn't seem too interested. The meeting is interrupted by the guards of the planet, who try to force their way in after receiving reports that an escaped convict is in the house. However, Riddick proves to be a bit too powerful for the guards, and he kills them using his expertise at fighting in the dark. At this point, the Necromonger fleet begins to attack Halion Prime. They slaughter the defenses of the planet, and the Necromongers storm out of their spacecrafts, killing everything they find. When they come across Imam and his family, he lures them away and gets killed trying to save his wife and daughter. The Necromongers gather the remaining people in the town hall, and we see the main leaders among them. Apart from the Lord Marshal, Voko and his wife hold important positions, and so does the Purifier. The latter explains the rules of their race, stating that those who do not convert will be killed. When one of the townsmen protests, Lord Marshal approaches him and removes his soul. This shocking death stuns the others, and they simply bow down to the supremacy of the Necromongers. Riddick does not bow before the leaders, and Vako approaches him with an ultimate threat. Riddick refuses and points to a powerful soldier with 2 axes, asking for the chance to take him on. This is the one who had killed Imam, and he still has Imam's knife stuck in his armor. Riddick proves to be too good for him with his electric moves and stabs him with a knife. Lord Marshal is shocked at the outcome of the fight, exclaiming that it was his best man that Riddick had just killed effortlessly. He makes Vako take Riddick to the main ship, where everyone is being converted. Lord Marshal wishes to know about Riddick's origins and uses a machine to analyze the hero. The machine starts to scream excitedly that Riddick is a Furion and must be killed immediately. But Riddick manages to fight his way out of the ship and gets outside. A Necromonger battleship gives chase briefly, but suddenly we see it being shot down by another spacecraft. It turns out that Toombs hadn't given up on his target and has assembled a new crew to capture Riddick from the heart of the Necromonger regime. Their plan is to take Riddick to the prison in Crematoria, where Jack is also being held. It is so hot that merely stepping on the surface would make one burst into flames, and Toombs intends to collect the money on Riddick's head from there. Meanwhile, Lord Marshal orders Vako to track down Riddick and kill him personally. Vako is surprised by the importance given to just one man, and Marshal explains that he was told that a Furion would be the cause of his death. Riddick is the only Furion left after Marshal has ordered the eradication of the race, and so he wants him dead as soon as possible. Vako obeys the command, but his wife, Dame Vako, coaxes him into killing the Lord Marshal and taking control of the Necromongers. With the idea stuck in his head, Vako heads out to hunt down Riddick. We see Toombs and his men taking Riddick to crematoria, and the director of the prison invites him to stay overnight so that they can discuss the reward. As they discuss terms, Riddick wanders around the prison, looking for Jack, and even finds her. She tells him all about her past life as a convict after she killed the mercenaries who took her in as a slave. She goes by the name Chiron now, and not Jack. Riddick tells her about his plans of escaping the planet, and we see the sun pattern on the surface. There's partial shade at times, but the sun comes back and burns everything in no time. While they decide on their plans, there is a feud between Toombs and his men and the prison director. They end up killing each other, and Riddick releases several other prisoners, telling them about his plans, which involve going back up on the surface, which is clearly dangerous. They must get to Toombs' spaceship, but a group of mercenaries is trying to do the same using underground passageways. This group is greeted by a small army of Necromongers led by Vaco. A gunfight ensues between them, and Riddick and the other prisoners watch from the mountains. But this lapse in time is crucial because the sun rays are closing in quickly. Eventually, Kyra is taken prisoner, and Riddick is knocked out by Vaco. The sun rays burn him, and the Necromongers flee with their prisoner. When Riddick wakes up, he is shocked to find the Purifier there. He has removed his Necromonger armor, and we learn that he is actually a Furion who was forcibly converted. Leaving his armor for Riddick, he walks out into the sun, bursting into flames. Riddick dresses up in Necromonger armor and uses Toombs' spacecraft to head to Hellion Prime. But his concealed identity is revealed when Dame Vaco spots the glowing eyes underneath the armor. She has plans of her own and advises Vaco to let Riddick almost kill Lord Marshal. It would then be easy for Vaco to end the Marshal's life himself and become the new leader. Riddick confronts Lord Marshal in the throne room and is shocked to find that Kyra has been converted. There is a hole in her neck, and she's clearly one of them now. Riddick and Lord Marshal engage in a vicious fight, but it turns out that the latter has special skills that make him supremely agile. He pins Riddick down and tries to remove his soul. However, just in time, Kyra jumps in to help and stabs him in the back. Riddick is saved, but Lord Marshal kills Kyra, impaling her onto a pole. Vaco steps into the fight, and instead of attacking Riddick, he takes on Lord Marshal. Marshal uses his teleportation skills to evade Vaco's axe, but Riddick stabs him in the head, killing him. The movie ends with Arion approaching Riddick and telling him about the ultimate Necromonger philosophy. You keep what you kill. All the others bow down to Riddick, who is clearly the new lord of the Necromongers. Riddick, losing everything and left for dead as we saw in the last movie, Riddick is now the new Lord Marshal of the Necromongers. However, he isn't dealing with power too well. It has been 5 years since the incident, and he still hasn't sworn into the Necromonger faith. This has caused many to be suspicious of his intentions, and there's growing dissent with every passing day. Many of his subordinates plan assassination attempts, and although he evades every one of them, he is not too happy in his leadership role. At this point, he strikes a deal with Commander Vaco. According to their deal, Vaco is to provide Riddick with a location for Furia and a spaceship to take him there. In return, Riddick would make him the next Lord Commander. Riddick is joined by Crone and a few Necromongers who accompany him for the trip. They reach a desolate planet, but Riddick soon finds out that it is not Furia. His escort party tries to assassinate him, but Riddick kills most of them in a fight. However, Crone causes a landslide during the battle and ends up burying Riddick alive. We see him emerge with a broken leg, and he is forced to face the vicious native predators. These creatures come in all shapes and sizes, from flying ones to water animals and beasts that are absolutely ruthless. An injured Riddick is no match for them, and he decides to hide amidst the abandoned ruins. There is a vast land beyond the rocky region, but the passage is guarded by deadly scorpion-like creatures called mud demons. These creatures lie dormant for much of the year and emerge when the rains arrive. They must keep their skin wet at all times and usually reside within the ground in pools of water. Their tails are their greatest weapons because they can use them to grab or stab their prey, and their bite is fairly venomous. The males of the species have a red stripe on their body, and the females are usually one solid color. They have a knack for surviving against all odds, and in one of the scenes, we see Riddick disemboweling a mud demon. though it manages to stay alive. Over time, Riddick starts to develop an immunity against their lethal venom. He starts to improvise weapons to deal with these creatures, and even raises a jackal pup to fight alongside him. Together, they manage to defeat the mud demons and escape into the vast savanna beyond the rocks. But storms seem imminent, and Riddick realizes that the oncoming rains will bring about more of the creatures he has just fought. In desperation, he activates an emergency beacon that lets his identity and presence on the planet be known. However, it draws in 2 rogue ships owned and operated by mean bounty hunters. One of the ships is led by Santana, and the other is led by a more professional fighter named Johns. Riddick threatens them to leave one of the ships if they want to escape safely, but the warning is clearly not heeded. Santana and Johns team up to ambush Riddick and shoot him with heavy tranquilizers. His loyal pet jackal tries to protect his master, but is shot dead by Santana. We learn that Johns is actually the father of William J. Johns, the bounty hunter in Pitch Black. He interrogates Riddick to learn about the fate of his son, but by now the storms have arrived, and more mud demons come out from the ground and attack them all. Johns decides to release Riddick so that they can find an escape route, but Santana is hell-bent on killing him to collect the reward on his head. Riddick beheads Santana in a fight and avenges the death of his beloved jackal. The group tries to retrieve the power nodes and take off on hover bikes. However, one of John's accomplices tries to kill them both while Riddick is telling the bounty hunter all about his son. In the fight, the accomplice is killed, but the hoverbikes are both damaged. Johns and Riddick have to fight hordes of mud demons, and in the uneven fight, Riddick is badly wounded. Johns abandons him and takes both the power nodes to fly off. The fight gets worse as more and more creatures attack, and it looks like it's finally the end of the road for Riddick. In a twist of fate, we see Johns returning in one of the spaceships, and Riddick is rescued. He thanks Johns for being a better man than his son, and takes the other ship to fly off. Wisdomstem, Johns chooses not to question where Riddick goes, forgiving him for the killing of his son. Riddick flies off into space, presumably still looking for his home planet, Furia. The mysteries around Riddick's species and the Furions explained after observing the heroics, or anti-heroics of Riddick. He must be wondering about his race. What is the source of his extreme strength and special powers? Clearly, this is the character that has impressed us in the movies with his carefree attitude and badass personality. The Furions are simply residents of a planet named Furia, which had harsh living conditions. In order to survive on this planet, it was a must to develop certain survival skills, and this is how the Furions developed their extraordinary physical abilities. They are one of the 4 elder races, according to the law, and they are much more hardy than the inhabitants of other planets. Some of us still remember the true crime that happened here on Furia. The Furions are known as powerful and spiritual warriors, and their fate was sealed as a result of a prophecy. A commander in the Necromonger ranks named Gilor learned that a young male Furion would eventually kill him. This made him undertake a large-scale genocidal assault on the planet, which terminated all Furion life, all except Riddick, who grew up to be unusually powerful and stealthy. His muscles had way more power than those of other humans, and it is believed that Riddick housed the collective Necromonger rage that was created from the entire Furion race being slaughtered. He was probably strangled along with the other newborns, but he survived the onslaught after being left for dead. He had no idea about his past, and thought that his mother had tried to strangle him before leaving him in a trash bin. He had a recurring vision of another Furion survivor named Shira, but he merely thought it to be some kind of mental instability. He started getting into trouble with the law from a young age, and soon became an infamous criminal, one who everyone was trying to catch. He has spent years in various prisons, but also finds his way out pretty quickly. The insanely awesome Riddick animated short, The Chronicles of Riddick. Dark Fury, not many are aware that, besides the 3 feature films, there's also an amazing animated short film based on the character of Riddick. This movie was released in 2004, and bridges the gap between the movies Pitch Black and The Chronicles of Riddick. The story begins after Riddick, Mom, and Jack escape the hostile planet. They are tracked by a mercenary spaceship, and Riddick tries to pose as William J. Johns. However, the ploy doesn't work because they soon run voice print matches and identify him for who he really is. An intense but brief battle ensues, and Riddick is somehow subdued. Jack is captured as well, and they realize that they've simply escaped one threat only to encounter another. The owner of the spaceship is Antonia Chillingsworth, and she has some rather strange plans for them. She collects notorious criminals for her prized collection and keeps them in a frozen state. Even in this condition, the criminals retain their consciousness, and they are helpless statues of art for the Psycho Lady. Riddick is a prized possession for her, and she thinks of him as the masterpiece in the collection. Unless Jack, Imam, and Riddick can fight an army of aliens and humans that Antonia unleashes at them, they will suffer a fate worse than death. You even get to see Toombs here before formally meeting him in the Chronicles of Riddick. He pursues Riddick for a while, and his gang of bounty hunters accompanies him. In this animated short film, we get to witness a harsh and rough side to Jack. In a situation of crisis, she shoots Antonia just as the latter is about to kill Riddick, thus saving him and demonstrating the criminal turn her character is about to take. It is important to note that in the next movie, we see her as a prisoner in crematoria. The three finally manage to escape from the mercenaries, and Riddick has some special plans for Imam and Jack. He delivers them to the pilgrimage site where he believes they will be safe, and then sets off on his own, like always. The future of the franchise, the Riddick movies, are not just sci-fi action entertainers. They also provide a platform for Vin Diesel to prove his true skills. He simply aces the morally complex role, and people love his portrayal of the anti-hero. Thus, it is a common question whether the franchise will see the release of further movies with Diesel playing the lead. There is some good news for you folks. We have received confirmation that Riddick 4 is very much in the cards, with director David Twohy and Vin Diesel teaming up one more time. The movie is tentatively titled Furyan, and the project has been stalled for years. The first talks about such a film took place in 2015, and shooting was to commence by 2017. However, the plans didn't work out, and Vin Diesel, being an in-demand star, didn't help the schedule. In 2019, the star himself stepped up to assuage the fears of fans who started thinking that the project was cancelled. If reports are to be believed, David Twohy was at the time in the final stages of touching up the script, and in the summer of 2020, he finally delivered the complete work to Vin Diesel. The megastar loved the new draft, and they're supposed to start shooting sometime this year. No formal dates have been announced yet, but given the fact that Vin Diesel will have to shoot for Fast and Furious 10 in 2022, we believe that this movie is in the cards. Let's just keep our fingers crossed, hoping that Riddick will return. This is all the time we had for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. It would be awesome if you guys can take some time to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us which topic you want us to cover in the comment section.